It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. And I'm so glad that you're taking time out of your day to listen or watch today's show. And if you're enjoying it, please take an extra moment to subscribe, follow, review the podcast or our YouTube show, podcast wherever you consume it, or our YouTube show. And we do this for you. Our election votes are counted every day because you decide if we're doing a good job serving you, empowering you, giving you the tools to take more control of your wallet and your life. That's what we're about. So remember when there was a constant refrain about shrinkflation? Well, do you know shrinkflation with packaged goods is starting to reverse? I mean, it's not reverse, but things are starting to turn. I'm going to tell you why. And also, job interviews are something that changed a lot in the aftermath, during and the aftermath of COVID. And I'll tell you, a lot of applicants have no idea how to nail that interview, which is even harder when you're having it remotely instead of face-to-face. We're going to talk about that later. So I obviously follow the investing markets. And PepsiCo has been not doing as hot lately. They own all the Frito-Lay stuff and all the chips and all that and the drinks. And, you know, Pepsi and Coke during COVID and the aftermath, they used it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to way push up the price of soft drinks, and in Pepsi's case, soft drinks and snacks. And I've talked about it. I've talked about the revolt, the shoppers' revolt. And now, in the aftermath of Pepsi's miserable corporate sales and earnings recently, what are they doing? They're like, okay, I guess people are telling us they don't want to buy our snacks right now. And so they're actually going back to putting more goods in the packages. Not every product, but they're testing it, putting more product in the bags. Duh. You don't lie to people. You don't lie to people. You don't have a hidden price increase by shrinking what's there. But the packaged goods manufacturers did that over and over again over the last 4 years. And people have said, enough. I'm not going to spend that money to buy a bag and open it up and look, where's the stuff? Where are the chips? I mean, there was a hugely successful Wendy's ad forever ago. Where's the beef? Where's the beef? We're talking about where's the Tostitos? Where's the chips? Open the bag. Where are they? And so Pepsi's like, okay, we get it. We were corporate dumb. We got it. We're putting more in. And you're going to see this happen with more and more. Procter & Gamble, which ran up prices of consumer goods so much through the COVID cycle and after. They're going to start saying, oh, well, maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to do that. And it's going to be restoring some sense of value with what they're selling you. You know, what the product manufacturers do usually is at first they will say, oh, well, we need to have a discount line of this, a cheaper version of it, and try to hold margins that we've run up on the main products and the new and improves. And then that doesn't do it because the sales keep as they call it in corporate America, softening on the items that they ran up the price so much. So we're in a wave where you are having your power restored. You know, with the supply chain disruptions and shortages, the product manufacturers had us right where they wanted us, desperate to be able to just go in there and see. Remember when people were doing the panic buying of toilet paper? And they were just happy to be able to have toilet paper because they were like, what am I going to do now? Am I going to go get a Japanese toilet? What am I going to do? You know what that is. You don't use paper. Anyway, so the market is going through a clear shift, and it proves that when you go on buyer's strike, it works. And it's not if people try to organize a boycott of this or that product. It's when individual consumers see the price and say, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. And something I hope that holds is the amount of private label stuff that we're buying as a percent of purchases has gone up in the United States. Normally in economic cycles in the United States, when people feel less pressure, they go back to buying name brand goods. We buy far less private label store brand than people do everywhere else in the developed world. This is a change. If you've made it, stick with it and don't pay those huge higher prices you have to pay to the brand name goods sellers.
All right, Christina in California says, due to the crazy real estate market in California, I've been researching the idea of building an ADU on my property and would love to move my elderly parents in. I've been given a quote of $225,000 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 750 square foot unit. The price seems reasonable for the high cost of living here in the central coast of California.
Wait, is that $3,000 a foot? Is my math right? How much is that a foot? It's a lot.
What would be the best option to finance this? I own my home, and according to Zillow, it's worth around $980,000. I still owe $315,000 on the mortgage. Which type of loan would be best, a HELOC or a home equity loan?
So the ADU thing, if you don't live in California, this is mind-blowing to you. These are sometimes prefab or partially prefab. If you go on Amazon, we talked about this a while back, they're selling a prefab for, is it $20,000?
Something like that.
1990, 20, something like that. And in California, because of the crazy, ridiculous building codes that each little community or, forget even the counties, because counties are generally pretty big in California, but each little community has these bizarre building codes to try to discourage the building of little cottages, or what did we call them for a while? Tiny homes. But these are obviously 750 square feet is a lot bigger than that. It's one of my pet peeves that we don't have a national building code in the United States that would make building so much more affordable and allow so much more automation. Be that as it may, in California, as things stand today and all the craziness with the local government rules to try to make it impossibly expensive to build these things, how are you going to pay for the nearly $250,000? So you got so much equity in your home, and how long is it going to take to pay it off? Nothing about that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So the decision to make is based really on how long you think it would take you to pay off the $225,000. If you think that you're going to be having maybe, I don't know if you're going to just let your elderly parents live free or if they're going to be paying you rent. I don't know how that's going to play. If it's going to be long-term money, you need to do a home equity loan, which will be at a fixed rate. If the rates on home equity loans fall at a future date, you can refi that. If this is going to be a short-term borrow that I would say under today's interest rates, I would say 5 years or less, do a HELOC, because the rates that HELOCs are set by are likely to fall. Longer term rates aren't going to fall as much as shorter term rates likely are going to fall. If you're going to do it, whichever you're going to do it at a credit union or a very small bank, not at any of the big banks unless you want to pay too much.
Kelly in Arizona says, living in sunny Arizona, I take advantage of the wonderful weather and I'm very active. Last year I was involved in a bicycle versus truck accident.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad you're here to talk about that.
I was riding the bicycle and got the bad end of the deal. I'm fine now. However, I did suffer some non-life-threatening injuries and needed medical care and therapy. I can say I'm back to health now. I did pursue a personal injury claim against the driver who was working for an electrical company at the time. I just recently settled out of court and received a small settlement of around $4,300. My question is, will this personal injury settlement amount be taxed in any way? I don't want any surprises when it comes time to file my income taxes in February. Thank you for all of your wonderful advice and helpful information over the years.
First of all, I'm so glad you're okay. Second, that is a crazy small settlement amount versus what we normally hear. It sounds like you did not have legal representation when you did it. In your case, the amount of tax you would owe would not be a crazy amount, but it all depends with a settlement following a personal injury, the wording of it, whether it's taxable or non-taxable. And that's a question based on the wording of the settlement that can only be answered by a person who does tax, either an enrolled agent or a CPA. And what I've always recommended is someone who is in a position where following an accident they may receive a very large settlement, that before you accept the settlement, that you talk to a tax person and encourage the lawyer negotiating for you to have it categorized in what will have the least amount of tax implications in the final settlement you receive. But there is no thing I can say, okay, this will have this much tax or what, because it all depends on the wording of the settlement you received.
Anthony in Texas says, my son will be turning 16 this November, and the plan is for him to get my 2016 Subaru Outback, and I will purchase a new-to-me car. I'm considering a used EV, leaning toward the Bolt, and would like your help getting clarification on the stipulations receiving the used EV tax credit. I would want to make sure I'm maximizing the amount of credit I receive based on the updated guidelines.
Okay, wonderful question. If you're buying it from a dealer, whether you buy a Bolt or whatever you're buying, they are now in a position where they can take the credit up front and give it to you right there. And you're not worrying about whether or not you're eligible for the credit. They're the ones shouldering the risk because it comes right off what you have to pay the dealer when you're buying the vehicle. The rules are somewhat clear at irs.gov, but the best explanations of the rules are from the EV bloggers. There are various websites, like Electric is one, ends with a K, that you can read how the new vehicle and used vehicle credits work, the tax credits for electric vehicle purchases. And you don't want to just rely on what you're told by somebody selling a vehicle. You want to have read first and see if you're doing the things and buying a vehicle that's going to qualify for the used vehicle EV credit. So it's funny, when I talked recently about how the best deals in the used vehicle market are on used electric vehicles, not used gas vehicles, I didn't even talk about the tax credit because I didn't want it to just be like, oh yeah, and I'm automatically going to get this money. You have to do your homework first to know that you qualify for the used vehicle EV credit. And I did want to say something about you buying a Bolt EV. The Bolt has had depending on the model you buy in the year, they've had some issues with it, and you want to check the model year you're thinking of buying of the Bolt to make sure you're all clear on buying one, or if it's a model year, maybe you should be wary of buying a used Bolt EV. Coming up ahead, and by the way, if you love your Bolt, I'm not trying to offend you, just want you to know that there have been issues with some of the models of the Bolt. Coming up ahead, how do you handle a job interview? Gosh, you talk to people who interview applicants, the stories they can tell right now about applicants just not being prepared at all for that interview. People who are interviewing applicants for jobs can always tell you stories. When I used to do a lot of interviewing of candidates many years ago, when I interviewed people for my business, I would be really surprised at some of the things that applicants told me. Applicants late for interviews, applicants not showing up for interviews, all kinds of things that would happen. But I keep hearing anecdotally, and I don't know if it's true or not, but hiring managers say there's never been a time like now at how crazily unprepared and unprofessional people are being when they show up for interviews. And I think some of it happened with the casualness that crept into the job market over the last several years when jobs were crazy plentiful. And I told the story back 2.5 years ago where a hiring manager was trying to fill a position and had 10 finalist candidates, and 9 no-showed for their last interview. 9 out of 10 no-showed. No call, nothing. I mean, this is not smart because you never know when that comes back around. You want to be dressed right for an interview? Not like I dress every day. You want to be dressed right, but you also want to be dressed appropriately for the culture of where you're interviewing. What you wear for a Silicon Valley job interview is completely different than Wall Street or a bank or whatever. You got to know that culture of that industry and that individual employer. And speaking of which, you got to know about that employer. Check up online, read what you can to understand what they're about. You want to read, companies always tout their corporate purpose or goal statements or whatever, and they publish them online at the company website. You want to know what is their thing? What do they think they're trying to do? You want to understand that individual employer. Be prepared. Don't have spelling errors on a resume you email or a physical resume you might be giving somebody. And something I hear over and over again, eye contact. Eye contact. Be listening, an active listener. What's that person telling you they're looking for by what they're asking you? Be genuine. But one thing, never badmouth a former employer. Never. Because all they're thinking is when you're not there anymore, you're going to be bad-mouthing them. Even if your old employer was terrible, what do you gain? What benefit is there by you saying, well, that was just an awful place to work? Come on. No. What over the years is the worst thing you've ever had happen with somebody you were interviewing?
Oh, gosh.
Or any oops you did?
I mean, I was pretty good with interviewing, and one thing I was going to say too is I always followed up with a thank you note. I used to do a handwritten thank you note, but I think today an email would suffice. If you have the email of whoever interviewed you, whether it was a human resources person or the person hiring or whatever it was, I think that's always a good thing to do. But just, like you said, find information, maybe have some questions prepared to ask. And I agree with you, like you have to understand what they're looking for. So,
okay, I got to tell you the funniest thing that ever happened when I was interviewing somebody. So I'm interviewing this woman for a job, and it turned out she didn't drive herself. Her husband drove her and was sitting in the parking lot. And all of a sudden, we start hearing this person laying on a horn.
Oh, no.
Yes, I'm not kidding. And the horn doesn't stop. And so she said, I think that's my husband. I'm like, why do you think that's her husband? So she goes out, and this was an office where we had a outdoor breezeway. And she goes out there, and she starts yelling at him in the car. And then he gets out of the car. He's yelling at her from down the parking lot.
Oh, my gosh.
And she just goes and leaves. She did not get a job.
Wow.
Is that like the craziest thing ever? I imagine there were issues
yeah.
galore with the two of them.
I just heard a story. It's not about hiring, but someone who ended up getting fired because they were showing up to work, late and had been warned like several times. And she would be like, well, I was only like 20 minutes late or whatever. So that was already an issue. And then she just didn't show up or call one day. And the manager said, what happened? Why didn't you show up? And she said, well, it was my birthday.
What?
I mean, why would I work on my birthday? Like,
why would you work on your birthday? Now, if you take it as a scheduled vacation day.
Exactly, that's great.
If that's
no,
fine.
You don't no-show, no. Okay.
I'm sure people who are thinking, oh, you think that happened? Let me tell you what happened where I am.
Yeah, tell us some stories. Right into us. Okay, we'll go to some questions now. This one came in from Keith. My wife and I recently separated.
Oh, so we're yucking it up. And
I know,
we got
I'm
this
sorry,
happening.
Keith.
Sorry, Keith.
Sorry, Keith. It looks like we're heading towards a divorce. We were debt-free, including our home. Our agreement is she gets all of our non-retirement investments plus $60K, and I keep the home. What is the best type of loan to come up with the $60K? It will take me 3 to 4 years to pay it off. The home is worth $250,000. So do I get a mortgage again or a home equity loan? Is there another type of loan that I am unaware of?
So first of all, I'm really sorry you're going through this, and sounds like you're already getting to the point where you have an agreement, and I'm concerned that this may be an agreement that you've made among yourselves without consulting anyone. If you're saying she gets all of the investments plus $60K, who's getting what from retirement investments? How are you doing that? I hope that whatever you're doing is fair to each of you and that you've consulted for that.
With an attorney for sure, if you can.
Right. So 3 to 4 years, it's fantastic that you're going to be able to absorb that $60,000 in 3 to 4 years. So in 3 to 4 years, no doubt a HELOC. We had another question about the ADU that was about the HELOC or a home equity loan. Your case is solid HELOC. HELOCs, particularly if you shop around, go to a credit union, and they usually offer no or low closing costs. The interest rate will be set as it should be at the right markup over prime, and the prime should be going down, and you'll be able to cycle through it in 36 to 48 months. Perfect tool for this situation. And I want to wish both you and your estranged wife good times ahead, because I know this is a tough cycle that you're in right now.
Kay in Colorado says, Clark, I listened to you years ago and just found you on YouTube. I'm so happy to hear from you again. I'm moving to Missouri from Colorado. Do you have any advice for renting a truck, including the cost, the best value, etc.? My son will help me with the move. Do they ever offer discounts for seniors?
If there's discounts for seniors, I'm not aware. There may be an AARP discount that one of the moving truck companies have. But the thing with moving trucks is fascinating, at least to me, that they all use yield management now to set the price of the trucks. And so depending on where they need trucks and all that, moving out of Colorado is a big advantage to you. States that are seeing big in-migration charge a lot of money for trucks going to them. On the other hand, trucks leaving a state with big in-migration like Colorado, they're begging for you to move that truck out of state. So you'll tend to get a much lower price. Plus, the rates differ so much by day of the week, day of the month, very end of one month, beginning of another. Often local and one-way rentals cost a lot more with yield management. And you want to try different companies because one company may have a bigger need to get a truck of the size you need out of Colorado than another. So you will be surprised, though, if you have flexibility about when you move to Missouri, or as some people would say in parts of Missouri, when you do that move, you will really find potential real benefit by using the calendar as your friend. And the more you matrix that with different companies and different dates, the lower you'll pay in total price. By the way, your own automobile insurance may not cover you for a rental truck depending on how many feet it is. If you have, depending on your insurer, maybe they'll cover up to a 12-foot truck or maybe a 16-foot truck. Whatever it is, you need to know that up front. If you're not covered by your own automobile insurance, you need to buy the insurance, as overpriced as it is, from the one-way truck rental company.
Annabella in Florida says, J. Jill, which is a women's clothing retailer, I assume that Annabella has a credit card
know
from,
what that
is charging $2.99 per paper credit card statement. I really don't want to go digital. How can I avoid this?
Go digital. This is a case where, I talk about the benefits of having paper statements versus the potential problems from not having them. In this case, you have a reality. You will save $36 a year if you simply go to digital statements. Do it, because the $36 a year staying in your pocket is worth more to you than the hassle you have to deal with not receiving paper statements. So that brings up another thing. So this is a store card. Store cards are considered to be junk credit. There needs to be an appreciable benefit to you carrying that store card for whatever this women's store is I've never heard of. Anyway, there needs to be an appreciable benefit that makes it worth it having it. And if you're thinking, yeah, I'd be okay without it, then no, you don't even have to make a decision here. You know you're saving the $36, boom, simply by not having that card anymore. And there's no diss on whatever that women's clothing store is. I don't like store cards, captive store cards, because they are potentially considered to be a negative on your credit, not a positive. And store cards tend to carry the highest interest rate charges of any cards. So I hope that you have an absolutely great rest of your day. Know what we're about. You learning ways to save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off. And if you feel like somebody's ripping you off, you've got a decision you got to make about something, don't know the best way to do it, know that you can go to clark.com/CAC and find out how to get free one-on-one advice and information from a member of the Team Clark Consumer Action Center. And we'll be at your service tomorrow.